Welcome to the debate. As we look toward 2026, the global supply chain landscape is being defined by really a perfect storm of structural risks. We're talking about geopolitical fragmentation, persistent inflation, and escalating climate volatility, all happening as digitalization just continues to accelerate.
Indeed. And the sheer scale of these external risks is what's striking. If you look at the top global risks for just the next 2 years, the World Economic Forum's 2025 analysis ranks extreme weather as the second most likely cause of a material crisis. You combine that with economic instability, and, well, every single part of the supply chain is facing this constant, non-negotiable margin pressure.
Exactly. Which brings us to our central question for today. Is this so-called resilience tech revolution, AI, IoT, blockchain, is it truly the most effective defense against these huge systemic risks? Or are the fundamental high-cost challenges and implementation barriers simply going to overshadow any of technology's promised gains? I'm going to argue that integrating these technologies offers the most direct, most quantifiable path to real resilience.
And I'll be coming at this from a different angle. I'd argue that these persistent macro risks, the geopolitics, the inflation, the cyber threats, they require expensive, fundamental, and often non-tech shifts. And these operational realities, coupled with some severe security concerns, are going to significantly mute technology's positive impact. It becomes more of a tool for optimization, not a strategy for true resilience.
Well, my core claim is that technology provides the predictive foresight and the collaboration mechanisms that are just essential for thriving in an uncertain 2026. This synergy moves resilience from reactive recovery, cleaning up after a disaster, to a proactive strategy. And we're already seeing quantifiable success here. AI is projected to make supply chains up to 45% more effective in timely and error-free delivery. It's a fundamental shift from simple automation to intelligent decision-making.
Okay, I agree that optimization is possible, but we can't ignore the inherent cost premium. Resilience fundamentally is a costly trade-off with efficiency, regardless of what tech you layer on top. And firms are responding to this need for stability through very high-cost, very physical strategies. A 2022 survey found 81% of firms plan to increase dual sourcing, and 80% are aiming to boost inventory. Now, these aren't digital solutions. These are buffer strategies that inherently raise input prices. You're sacrificing operating leverage for stability, and that cost is structural.
But those physical strategies are being guided by technology. We aren't talking about just blindly increasing inventory. AI-driven predictive analytics is now a 60% focus for major organizations for this exact reason. It allows for precision. Digital twins, for instance, lets you model these physical changes, boosting inventory, changing suppliers, you name it. They allow for real-time simulation, which has been reported to decrease disruptions by up to 30%. That simulation capability allows organizations to make these tough, costly decisions, but with quantified confidence.
I'm not convinced that modeling a high cost eliminates the cost itself. The unavoidable economic premium from geopolitical reality is still structural. Risks like tariffs or protectionism, they force companies to source from multiple, often less efficient regions. 44% of companies plan to shift sourcing because of this. And that need for diversification is a strategic constraint that, frankly, digitalization just can't eliminate. It means paying more for redundancy, and that cost hits the bottom line no matter how elegantly your software predicts it.
I think we need to look at what happens when digitalization is applied to the physical movement of goods, specifically in critical hubs. Let's pivot to cybersecurity, because enhanced visibility through IoT and AI creates really robust defensive capabilities in places like smart ports.
Okay.
The adoption of IoT devices, sensors, cameras, tags for real-time monitoring is what's driving growth in this sector. This visibility doesn't just prevent equipment failure, it allows for proactive decision-making. Think of a major container line using sensors to monitor the exact temperature of perishable goods. They can intervene before spoilage, saving millions. The tech is providing resilience where traditional methods just couldn't.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that this massive increase in connectivity is a pure benefit. Increased digitalization is itself a predominant risk, not just a solution, as Zanetta's analysis highlighted. You are dramatically expanding the attacked surface area. When every container and every crane is connected via IoT, you introduce thousands of points of edge vulnerability. These devices are difficult to patch centrally, creating countless entry points for attackers.
But that complexity is met by...
And the consequences are massive. You mentioned smart ports. If that system goes down, global commerce halts. The 2024 CrowdStrike outage showed that a single cyber disruption can cost Fortune 500 companies over $5 billion in direct losses. You're trading complexity for speed, but you're multiplying your system's vulnerability in the process.
That technological complexity demands and is being met by superior governance and robust tech. AI can identify network anomalies far faster than any human-monitored system. And blockchain technology, which is more than just a transparency tool, fosters these crucial virtuous cycles of trust. Its immutability, the fact records can't be altered, is essential for verifying goods across volatile networks.
But if blockchain is the answer, why isn't it everywhere? The research points to a huge blocker: severe governance and security concerns around data privacy and regulatory compliance. According to the Transportation Research Procedia, these concerns are so acute they actively hinder adoption. You can't stabilize collaboration if companies fear legal liability from sharing data. We're seeing a vicious cycle where the security risks are preventing the governance solution, blockchain, from being widely implemented.
That's an implementation hurdle that requires standardization, not a refutation of the technology's inherent value. Let's go back to external shocks, though, which you mentioned are the primary driver of volatility.
Right. My point was that geopolitical tensions are systemic shocks. Policy changes, tariffs. These demand non-tech strategies like regionalization or nearshoring. We saw the 2018 U.S.-China trade war cause spot rates on critical lanes to spike over 70%. Technology doesn't prevent a trade war.
You're correct. It cannot prevent a government from imposing tariffs, but technology does provide the framework to manage the resulting macro costs proactively. That is the definition of supply chain resiliency. Digital twins, which we discussed, are used explicitly to model these strategic changes. They let organizations validate the financial and operational impact of sourcing shifts before capital is deployed. So if risk dictates shifting production from Southeast Asia to Mexico, the digital twin models the entire new network, logistics, labor costs, everything, to ensure capital is invested in the most efficient areas of diversification.
I see why you frame it that way, as managing the inevitability of the cost, but that still confirms my core thesis. The cost of redundancy remains structural. The Richmond Fed analysis is clear that firms are willing to pay this premium, so you're paying a high price for stability. And whether you model that price with a digital twin or a spreadsheet, the structural increase in cost remains. Technology is an accountant of the cost, not an eraser of the cost.
I would argue that blockchain is more than an accountant. It's a risk mitigator. When supply chains fracture and you've shifted sourcing across new countries, trust becomes paramount. Blockchain enhances resilience by strengthening traceability and reducing fraud in these volatile cross-border environments. It provides that immutable ledger you need to stabilize collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to focus on high-level modeling, but we have to look at the measurable, practical successes. This isn't theoretical. AI is solving persistent issues like water management in agriculture, where IoT-based systems can cut water use by up to 50%. In logistics, AI is improving inventory management by 35%. The capability is here now to transform processes.
And those are compelling gains, I will grant you that. However, we have to look at the implementation reality. The main barriers here are internal, financial, and human. The implementation gap is severe. The Relic Solutions 2025 report identified some critical friction points. 44% of companies can't find qualified talent to even deploy these AI systems. 43% face severe budget constraints, and, critically, 39% struggle with the basic data quality required for AI to even function reliably.
Sure, but data quality is an operational...
You just can't have intelligent decision-making if your data inputs are garbage. The predictive foresight you're championing breaks down completely at the point of dirty, inconsistent data. And that operational friction is a much bigger immediate hurdle than any external tariff.
Data quality is an operational challenge, yes, but it requires investment. It doesn't negate the technology's transformative power. It demands strategic investment to close that skills gap, but the ROI from optimized inventory and reduced disruptions vastly outweighs the cost.
And what about the sustainability gap? The focus on immediate economic gains, cost reduction, means environmental and social sustainability are often secondary. The Sustainable Futures Review found that less than 22% of cold chain logistics research incorporates low-carbon technologies. There's a massive lag in adopting green solutions because of high upfront costs. So budget-constrained firms are prioritizing immediate efficiency over long-term planetary resilience. The potential is there, but fiscal reality pushes ESG way down the priority list.
That speaks to a strategic misprioritization by management, not a failure of the technology itself. The tools exist. AI can model low-carbon routes just as easily as it models cost cuts.
But it isn't being prioritized.
Look, I acknowledge the reality of the costs, the governance challenges, and the implementation gap, but I have to reaffirm that the only sustainable way to meet the future complexity of 2026 is through digital intelligence. AI and blockchain don't just react, they anticipate. They provide the transparency and real-time responsiveness needed to handle the inevitable disruptions.
And I'll concede the immense potential of AI and IoT. I will. However, I have to stress that until organizations solve the foundational issues of talent scarcity, budget constraints, amplified cybersecurity exposure, and the structural economic burdens from geopolitics, which are costly external realities, the promise of technological resilience will remain constrained by practical and fiscal friction. Resilience today requires physical redundancy, which is managed by but not replaced by digital tools.
The friction point is severe, but it is one that demands continuous strategic investment.
Indeed. The path to true resilience remains a complex balancing act between innovative technology and these external, costly realities.
We encourage you to reflect on these findings in your own operations. Are your systems truly resilient enough for the volatility we expect in 2026? Or are you prioritizing optimization over necessary redundancy?
And we invite you to consider where the true choke points lie in your supply chain. Is it in your technology's capabilities, or is it in the foundational resources and strategic challenges facing your organization?
Look for our poll. Is your chain resilient enough for 2026?